Today, Lori's making lemon chicken, and Representative Brodeur gives his views on the Stand Your Ground law. It's all happening right now on Live with Lori.
Thanks for staying with us. Today we're making a great lemon chicken with State Representative Jason Brodeur, and it happens to be his favorite dish. So let's hope this will be his favorite dish. We're going to fix our green beans now. I'm going to have you slice up this garlic.
Okay, I can do that.
Be very careful.
All right.
No, that's slice the rest of it like this.
Oh, slice it. I got you. I thought we were going to mince it.
No, we're going to fry it up.
Okay.
And I'm going to blanch these green beans.
Great.
But I want to ask you, you were on a task force for the Stand Your Ground law.
I was. It's the Citizen Safety and Protection Task Force charged by the governor to review Chapter 776, which is Florida's justifiable use of force statutes. This past year, there had been some call to make sure that those were things that would actually help not only our residents but tourists and folks understand what is allowed and permissible when it comes to justifiable use of force in the state of Florida.
Now, you said something earlier that I thought made a lot of sense. You know, that you can claim the Stand Your Ground law just like you can claim, insanity for defense.
That's right.
Doesn't mean that you get it.
No.
That makes perfect sense.
That's right. In law, there are, and I'm not an attorney, so forgive me if I botch this to all the attorneys out there, but there is something called the affirmative defense, which basically says, yes, I did it, but there was a reason for it. And so if we look at justifiable use of force statutes throughout time, it exists not only in English common law, but it goes back to the book of Exodus and the book of Genesis. There are examples all over history where it's perfectly acceptable for you to defend yourself. And so as we explain that, it is imperative that we have a consistent application of that throughout every circuit in the state of Florida. And really and I think what we found out through all of the meetings that we had throughout the state of Florida this entire summer and fall is that a lot of folks don't disagree at all with the fact that you should be able to meet force with force in a place like your home or your car or somewhere you're legally allowed to be. And if you claim Stand Your Ground as an affirmative defense, it does not mean necessarily that you're going to get it. It's like insanity. There is a hurdle to that to prove it. So every time the media says somebody assaulted somebody and claims Stand Your Ground, understand that may be their affirmative defense, but it's still up to a court of law to decide whether or not that was legally justifiable.
I think the conversations need to be had, but I think one of the conversations also needs to be, gun safety. Who should have guns, maybe, and, I know that in the state of Florida, there are certain segments of the population who are not allowed to have guns. Yeah. And I think that enforcing the gun laws that we have and making sure that people are allowed to maintain that safe barrier, shall we say, against a criminal, I think that's a good thing.
Well, and a lot of what we've seen recently, and certainly in national news, our hearts go out to the families of Newtown. I mean, that is one of the most horrific tragedies in American history. But I think what's lost in a lot of that discussion is that the perpetrator of that act was somebody who was mentally unstable, who had illegal access to guns that they shouldn't have had in the first place. What they did was illegal already. Passing more gun laws isn't going to help. I think one of the things that people forget is that in 2012, the largest number of child homicides by gun violence in the United States was in Chicago, that has the toughest gun laws in the United States. What we need to do is focus on mental health. Florida doesn't do a very good job of funding mental health, making sure that we can put people who should not have any access to these weapons, making sure that people who need the medical help that they should be getting have access to it. That's something we need to be focused on. I don't think it's right that if you have a drunk driver get into an accident and kill somebody, that we make it harder for everyone else to buy cars.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. Well, your mom being a teacher, what do you think of Arizona putting forth a option of putting guns in the schools?
I also don't believe I agree with the NRA position that we need armed guards at every school. I think it's a conversation that every community needs to have. But this is not something that we need to make sure we spend an enormous amount of money, an enormous amount of time for something that may not be solving the underlying problem of mental health. So I think as we talk about this discussion, let's talk about the causes of what has precipitated the discussion, and not necessarily a knee-jerk reaction that may or may not have caused or helped this tragedy. It should be known that it took 20 minutes for emergency personnel to arrive at Newtown.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize.
So having,
I think having the discussion as people have started doing, I really think is a valid thing to do. But I think that, blaming one thing and one thing specifically is kind of a simplistic attitude.
There's no doubt in my mind that if anybody could, they would take back the events of that day, and certainly all of the events that have happened on all of the children in America over the last year when it comes to that kind of violence. But I think it's important that we analyze what the true causes of all that violence is, and not just take a huge reaction that really could be applied to anything that could cause harm or violence in our society.
Right.
Cars, baseball bats, you name it.
Yeah, I think it's a good discussion to have. Stay with us, because when we come back, we're going to have our green beans finished. We're going to take the chicken out of the oven, and we're going to ask Jason Brodeur our signature question, so don't go away.
Coming up next, Lori asked Representative Jason Brodeur her signature question when we come back on Live with Lori.